4/20, 1879, a real ship of the desert. A report comes from the Sierra Nevada mountains, says Vidalia, of the discovery of the timbers of a stranded vessel resembling those of a Chinese junk, high up in the mountains between Mineral King and the headwaters of Kings River. The sound portion of the timbers resemble camphor wood, and it is said still retains a faint smell. The fastenings are of copper, the rigging, etc. are of course all gone. A number of bones supposed to be human were also found in the vicinity, and upon the adjacent slopes there is abundant evidence of the previous occupation of the waters in the shape of shells, as well as the occasional finding of petrified fish. That this valley has at one time been an inland sea is admitted by geologists, but that these waters were navigated by celestial seamen 1 or 2,000 years ago has never been claimed, even by the Chinese themselves. But these same people do claim to have been the original discoverers of this country. It's very interesting that this was found in Tulare County, the home of the Sequoias. I almost guarantee the Tartarians and Chinese were all over this country. November 1860, The Cave in Florida. A correspondent of the National Intelligencer referring to alleged discovery of a cave in Florida in which was found a Latin inscription certifying that it was inhabited or visited by Europeans in the 11th century, directs the attention of American antiquarians to Cardinal Wiseman's treatise on connection between science and revealed religion, in which that accomplished scholar and archaeologist states it is as fact, when speaking of the Aborigines of America, that there are manuscripts in the Vatican Library at Rome which say that this continent was known to missionaries of the Eternal City in the 10th century, and concludes his remarks by asking the question, who can enlighten us on the subject? The records found in the Danish archives since the work of Cardinal Wiseman was written prove that this continent was known by the Northmen before it was discovered by Columbus. Florida has a big part to play in the history of this country since it's on all the old maps. There must be treasures everywhere, and the Vatican knows it all. Now, this one got me thinking. This is from July 1929, where it says, America's largest known shooting star scar. Luckily, the untold tons of stellar scrap iron that formed it fell on Arizona wasteland and not in the heart of a city. So, untold tons of stellar scrap iron, and they claim it's a shooting star scar. But scrap iron fell from all over the wasteland and not in the heart of the city, and they were thankful for it. And to me, it makes me feel like they were blowing things up like crazy. Like they were testing out more methods of destruction using different things that had metal casings, and that's why the scrap iron was going everywhere. I find it hard to believe really any of this other stuff anymore. And I'm going to do a video soon on Rapa Nui, Easter Island, because they have things like this too. And what they pass off as craters and volcanoes and things like that might be something very different after all, and might be a big part of all that they are hiding from us and how they reset this place. November 1849, interesting discovery of a cavern in Wales. On Wednesday week, the miners at Landro broke in the course of their labors into what appeared to be an extensive cavern, the roof of which, being one massive stalactite, reflected back their lights with dazzling splendor. On examination, the cavern turned out to be an old work, probably Roman, the benches, stone hammers, etc., used by that ancient people having been found entire, together with many bones of mutton which has been consumed by these primitive miners. The bones are, to all appearance, as fresh, though impregnated with copper, as though they were when denuded of their fleshy covering after remaining, as they must have done nearly 2,000 years in the bowel of the earth. The cavern is about 40 yards long and must be a subject of great interest to those fond of investigating the remains of bygone ages. And I can't say it enough. We have to create a new organization that digs everywhere. It's time to find the truth. We gotta dig. June 1925, $5 million home. Edward J. Noble acquires famous Bolt Castle in Syracuse. Sale of the famous Bolt Castle and estate at Thousand Islands, comprising some 2,500 acres by the Thousand Islands Estate Incorporated, to Edward J. Noble, president of a nationally known candy concern, became known here today. The estate has a valuation of $5 million. The purchase price was not known. Up until 6 years ago, the property was owned by George Bolt, multimillionaire hotel magnate of New York City. The elaborate castle, never wholly completed, was once offered the President of the United States as a summer home. And I have a feeling something lies important in this castle. Again, the castles, the amount of castles that were here, the ones that are in Europe, there's something very suspicious about them, and I have a feeling they're all connected, and not just built in the 1800s. I have a feeling they're as old as the ones in Europe, and the ones that are remaining are the last of a lot that were probably here all over the place. May 1879, a dress of spiders' webs. A dress woven from the webs of the large spiders common in South America has been presented to Queen Victoria by the Empress of Brazil. It exceeds in fineness any manufactured silk known and is very handsome. Spaniards nearly 200 years ago endeavored to make gloves, stockings, and other articles of spiders' webs, but they yielded so little profit and necessitated so much trouble that the manufacture was abandoned. In 1710, the calculation was made that the webs of 700,000 spiders would be required for about 40 yards of silk. 40 yards of silk, wow. Such dresses are occasionally seen in South America. So pretty intense. I would not want to be doing with that because although I love spiders and respect for them, I fear them a lot. But it would look really cool, and they are very strong. So interesting. Empress of Brazil also sounds fascinating. October 1877, the Whispering Canyon. Words spoken on one side of Gold Canyon are heard with striking clearness upon the other side. The sounds are telephoned across the intervening space and may be as distinctly noted as if the speaker were standing by the side of the listener. This is of course due to the peculiar formation of the country. Neighbors who live on opposite sides of the canyon talk together quite readily when they live as much as a mile apart by the way the road runs. It is not so far by the air line, however. Gold Hill, Nevada News. Very interesting, and whatever was going on in these canyons is a total mystery that someone has to absolutely figure out, because these people that were living there probably knew if they were around there at that time they could explore, they could find amazing things, and no one now would ever know about it. I wonder what they saw. There are so many mysteries awaiting us all. September 1875. All clocks to be connected. L. Verrier has proposed to the prefect of the Seine to put all the public clocks in Paris in electrical connection with the standard clock of the observatory. This clock is placed in the vault of the observatory, nearly 80 feet underground. Nice observatory that's underground, where it is free from all surface vibrations and sensible changes of temperature. Its rate under these circumstances is remarkably steady, and its accuracy almost, if not quite, unrivaled, its error hardly ever exceeding a single second from one year's end to the other. The scheme is meeting with a favorable reception and is shortly to be submitted to the municipal council. If it is carried out, Paris will be more accurately timed than any other city in the world. I wonder if they went through with this. Very interesting. I'd like to see this vault because the underground of Paris is holding some serious secrets about the ancient world that we've got to figure out. Someone does. May 1879, Chinese diamonds. In the district of Shantung in China, a new source of wealth has been discovered. Small diamonds exist in considerable quantities, and the mode of collection is very curious. The mountain streams of Qingkangling are the favorite spots for diamond fishing. The natives walk about in the sands and in the streams, arrayed in thick straw shoes. The diamonds, being obligingly ragged and pointed, stick in the straw shoes, which are burned, and the diamonds are then collected from the ashes. The average size of these gems is about that of a pin's head, though one as large as a pea was carried to Chi-Fi and sold to a mandarin lately. The trade is in the hands of the priests of the Qingkangling temples, and the diamonds are sold to glaziers at the great annual fairs. Very cool. I wonder what those fairs were like. And again, just the streams and everything with diamonds. What was happening in this world pre-1800 and all over the place that we are not told about? April 1879, Playing Mermaid. One summer night some 50 years since, the good people of Bude in Cornwall, England, of such of them as were out and about, were startled by the news that a mermaid was singing on a rock some distance from the shore, and their own eyes and ears soon verified the report. The next night there was a rush of the population to the beach. They were not disappointed. The mermaid appeared and flashed the moonbeams about from her hand mirror. Telescopes were brought in requisition, but she took no heed, braiding her tresses and trolling forth her melancholy ditty in profound indifference to the excitement she caused. Next night it was the same, and the next and the next, only the crowds grew greater and the mermaid hoarser. At last she tired of entertaining the multitude gratuitously, and winding up her vocal performance with something strongly resembling God Save the King, dived off the rock and was seen no more. Very interesting. People did a lot of awesome things back in the day. It's such an interesting time, and they didn't need a phone to capture it. March 1879, an extraordinary story comes to us from a Russian correspondent in Odessa who says there exists under the authority of Russia a funereal island situated in the neighborhood of Archangel on the Volga. The Kalmuks convey their sick there, and as soon as a member of a family becomes ill, he is shipped to the island. So great is the dread lest his disease be communicated to the other members of the household. If in an exceptional instance the poor fellow gets well again, he is none the less doomed, for he is fated to die of starvation on that dismal island. On reaching the shores, one is overpowered by the offensive smell. Myriads of flies are seen rising in swarms from this charnel place, and thousands of birds take to flight. The ground is strewn with corpses and skeletons. In March, when the river throws off its icy fetters, its waters rise and flood the island, carrying away into the waves of the Caspian all those human remains. I wonder how much human waste in general has just been tossed into the sea, thousands of years worth. September 1809, a singular phenomenon. About a week since, a lady of Annapolis, while superintending the economy of the kitchen, discovered a singular lusus natura in breaking some duck's eggs for a pudding. One of the eggs was found to contain within the center of its yolk a perfect egg, about the size of a robin's. Its shell was thin but complete, and when it was broken, it was discovered to contain a white and yolk entire, similar to its parent egg. How it was possibly to have grown there, this is a question difficult of solution. This egg was kept some time for the inspection of the curious, from the Maryland Republican, 1809. God, what? Just these stories are so fascinating from the past. I love digging through because just nothing, there's so many things in the cracks, and they just overall increase the vision of this earlier time when things were interesting. February 1879, a Javan Sazerac. Monkeys are famed as adepts in mimicry, and a British doctor in Java recently received an unpleasant proof of their imitative propensities. The doctor had a large monkey, tame and very clever, which was generally its master's companion in the dissecting room while he pursued his anatomical studies. Jacko used always to watch the proceedings attentively, and one day, when alone with its master, seized the unlucky doctor, popped him upon the dissecting table, and was just going to put his lessons to practical use when the doctor's cries brought the people of the house to the spot, just in time to save the doctor from immediate vivisection. That must have been a large monkey. And wow, again, incredible stories from the past that I'm glad were preserved because, wow, this is just a small moment in time, but it's making its way to 2024. Pretty cool. January 1879, killed by a meteor. Leonidas Grover was a widower living on his farm with a married daughter and her husband. Tuesday evening, January 12th, the married couple had been absent on a visit to some neighbors, and upon returning at a late hour, entering the house, found everything to all appearance in usual order, and supposing that Mr. Grover had already retired, went to bed themselves. Next morning, the daughter, having prepared breakfast, went to call her father and was horrified to find him lying upon his shattered bed, a mutilated corpse. Her screams brought the husband quickly to the bedroom, and inspection disclosed a ragged opening in the roof directly over the breast of the unfortunate man, which was torn through as if by a cannon shot and extended downward through the bedding and floor, holes showing the direction taken by the deadly missile. Subsequent search revealed the fact that the awful calamity was caused by the fall of a meteoric stone, and the stone itself, pyramidal in shape and weighing 20 pounds and a few ounces and stained with blood, was unearthed from a depth of nearly 5 feet. June 11th, 1912. Flames leap from the sea. Strollers along the esplanade at Oban, Argyllshire, Scotland, the other night were met by an unwonted spectacle. Opposite the Alexandra Hotel, great tongues of white flames were seen leaping straight out of the sea, not far from the beach. The phenomenon continued for about an hour, and drew a large crowd of onlookers, who speculated freely as to the cause. Stones were thrown in upon the flames, but had no effect. No conclusive solution of the mystery could be offered, but it is explained that the apparently strange occurrence was due to a quantity of hydrocarbon which had been thrown into the sea. Now, that makes a lot of sense, and it also is in the same area as the Loch Ness Monster, so maybe the Loch Ness Monster was breathing dragon fumes out after ingesting some of that hydrocarbon. Who knows? Or maybe radioactive like the turtles, and he turned Locky. November 1915, chivalry not yet dead. Once there were two airmen youngsters. They had attended the same school of aviation. They had learned to fly together. They became fast friends. Then came the war. One of them was German. He went to give his services to the emperor. The other was a Frenchman. He joined a French flying corps. And when he went about this business of scouting up aloft, his constant fear was that he might find up there in the clouds his friend and schoolmate. As a matter of fact, the first time he sighted a taube, he knew by the way it was handled who it was that steered it. The German recognized not less quickly the flight of the Frenchman. Both hesitated, swinging in great circles. Then duty was too strong for friendship. They charged each other. No, friendship stronger after all. As the Frenchman was about to strike the German, he tipped his left wing perilously and guided past almost on edge. The German did exactly the same thing, and each flew back to his own lines. Perhaps, says the Frenchman who tells this pretty tale, chivalry has found refuge in the air, but nothing below. Evening Star, December 1963. Castle living easy to find. Bonn, Germany. Romance is in the air when visitors to Germany make their hotel a one-time castle or medieval tower. Some 36 castle hotels are now in operation throughout the country, and the list is steadily growing. In the state of Hesse alone, more than $1 million has been earmarked for modernization or conversion of castle hotels. Recently refurbished were Hirschborn Castle on the Neckar, Frankenstein Castle on the Bergstrasse, Stauffenberg Castle near Glessen, Spangenberg Castle in the Meggensen. You get the idea. Cafe terraces, heating systems, new furnishings, and the parking lots are among the new features. New Year, the ancient Cistercian monastery on the Seine Fauerberg near Glessen will be converted into a hotel through extensive modeling. So they were, at this time in 1963, they were converting castles into hotels. Imagine what they were doing before that. Again, June 11th, 1912, solitary rock of Wassay. This solid pillar of basalt, the Goberon Dutsi, or solitary rock, stands near the Fulani city of Wassay in British East Africa. It is more than 1,000 feet high and is reputed unclimbable. The natives say there is a river on the top of it and that there are people there, but that if anyone ever did manage to go up to them, he never would return, or would return demented. So far as can be seen, the only inhabitants of the rock are pelicans, marabout storks, and huge baboons. So I wonder if they did know something, or if in the past there were people, or maybe they came out from the top. Or again, when I see a rock like this, I wonder, is it a tree? Is it an ancient, massive Tower of Babel-like structure? Or something we can't even fathom? Maybe even just a spout from where the underground civilizations come out of. Who knows? Around May 27th, 1919, this tiny little article appeared in a lot of the newspapers, and it said, "Apron made of human bones." Agra, May 26th. A relic of the expedition to Tibet in 1904, a 200-year-old apron composed of carved human bones worn by Tibetan lamas in performing certain rites, has been sold at auction here for $450. What a disgrace, because a priceless item like this is there's no value for it, especially not $450 even back then. And I wonder what this was used for. Was this a Tartarian ritual? What kind of ritual were they performing, and where? And how frequent was it? How ancient was it? How many more relics like this are there that they just desecrated and completely sold on the market to other elite privateers? Probably a ton. June 11th, 1912, poisoned by pennies. An extraordinary story was told recently at an inquest held in East Ham, London, on the body of a young employee of a local gas company, whose duty it was to collect coppers from the penny in the slot gas meters. For the past month, he had been in ill health and was under the care of a physician who expressed the opinion that he was suffering from metallic poisoning in some form. The victim told the doctor that he called at 100 houses a day collecting coins, eyes, which were very often green, and when he had done collecting, his hands were often green. The doctor stated that the deceased had a long, fair mustache, which he curled with his fingers, and by doing this had absorbed the verdigris. And he was killed by pennies. Now that is not a good way to go out. Either way, working at the gas company, you got the collecting pennies. Every single option this guy had was hazardous. It was tough back in the day. The Superior Times, October 1872, a ghost in a coal mine. The present tide of prosperity in the coal trade, says an English newspaper, has been disturbed at the Broughton Colliery, near the town of Wrexham, by the appearance of a ghost in the underground workings, which has had the effect of frightening some of the colliers from the pit. None of the men profess to have had a sight of the spirit who appears to have taken his abode in this vasty deep, but they all confess to having heard at times the most unearthly sounds, and when they proceed to search for the cause, the same noises are heard in quite an opposite quarter. The fear that has taken hold of the men is such as to interfere considerably with the working of the colliery, and it shows that colliers, like sailors, are excessively superstitious on the ghost question. I would be too if I was in some of those places, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were connected to underground worlds and people were still lurking in them, or something beyond. The Morris County Chronicle, June 11th, 1912, I believe. Stabbed with its spire. An unusual freak of the wind is illustrated in the accompanying picture. Town Hill commits suicide was the headline displayed in a newspaper of the vicinity, but it looked more like a case of murder, for during a heavy windstorm, the tall spire of the church was blown off and falling, pierced the roof in the manner shown. The church has stood for nearly 100 years on Town Hill in New Hartford, Connecticut. So I thought this was very interesting. I've never seen this. This was apparently not an old world, too old world of a construction because it couldn't handle its wind. But either way, very interesting church. And I couldn't get AI to create anything that resembled this, no matter how I described it. But they just wouldn't do it. So that's how freak of an occurrence it is. The artificial intelligence can't even fathom it. But history can. Morris County Chronicle, June 11th, 1912. Built by Roman Carnegie. Explorers in the ruins of the ancient city of Timgad in Algeria have unearthed the remains of a public library erected by a Roman Carnegie. The full inscription on the walls is to the following effect. Quote, out of funds bequeathed by Marcus Julius Quintianus Flavus Rogatianus of senatorial memory, by his will, to the colony of Tamagudi, his mother city, the erection of a library has been completed at a cost of 400,000 sesterces under the direction of the city authority. And it's cool, you can see the inscription still remaining in this place as if it was blown out way more recently than the 1st century or back in ancient Roman times. It seems like there are a lot of things hiding out in the deserts of Algeria, and they have to hold secrets of the truth about our history. Here's a real interesting one from June 11th, 1912. 12 men with 12 good eyes and 12 glass eyes attended a dinner served by one of their number at a hotel in Muncie, Indiana, the other day. The host was particular that every man present should wear a glass eye. When dinner was over, 12 glass eyes were removed, wrapped in a neat package, and sent to the proprietor of the hotel with the request that he inspect and return them. He opened the package in the presence of the telephone girl, and she fainted. I am not sure what this was all about, but yikes. And in general, what is going on here? These 12 men with the glass eyes, how did they all get them? Were they minors, or, was this a common thing? Or a freak occurrence, and this is just kind of a way like twins and things to meet up and have some fun or something. 1843. Influence of solar eclipses on animals. M. Arago, in his account to the Academy of Sciences of the solar eclipse of 8th of July, last stated that he had often heard accounts of birds dying from the mere influence of an eclipse of the sun, but could scarcely credit the statement, as they could only die from fear, and the discharge of a gun ought to frighten them much more, and yet it is certain that it does not kill them unless they are actually hit. One of M's friends to the experiment, he placed 5 linnets in a cage. They were lively and active, and fed up to the moment moment of the eclipse. When the eclipse had terminated, 3 of them were dead. A dog was kept fasting from morning. Immediately before the eclipse, he was offered food and fell on it greedily, but when the dusk commenced, he suddenly ceased eating. The horned cattle in the field seem affected with a kind of vague terror. During the eclipse, they lay down in a circle, their heads being arranged toward the circumference, as if to face a common danger. The darkness influenced even the smallest animals. They observed a number of mice which were running briskly, became suddenly still when the eclipse began. The Sully County Watchman, April 1888, the whistling tree, the Coronado. In Nubia, there are groves of acacia extending over 100 miles square. Quote, the most conspicuous species, says Dr. Schweinfurth, is the Acacia fistula. Its Arabic name is sofar, meaning flute or pipe. From the larvae of insects which have worked their way into the inside, their ivory white shoots are often distorted in form and swollen out at their base into globular bladder-like gall about 1 inch in diameter. After the insect has emerged from a circular hole, this thorn-like shoot becomes a sort of musical instrument upon which the wind, as it plays, produces the regular sound of a flute. On this account, the natives of the Sudan name the acacia the whistling tree. I am very curious to know what this sounds like, so I am going to research a little further. But hey, anyone from Africa out there? Is this still happening in the acacias? Do they still whistle? The Daily Alaska Empire, April 1933. Early babies had rattles. Constantine, Algeria, April 11th. A rattle in perfect working order has been unearthed by government archaeologists in a child's tomb at Timgad, dating from the 1st century. It consists of 2 bronze rods with a disc at the end of one which tinkles when the toy is shaken. So they have found rattles, and it turns out we are pretty universal, unless it was maybe used for something else, but I don't really want to dive too deep into this. I like how they refer to it as the 1st century. There was a lot of things found at Timgad, and I'm going to do some more shorts and videos about that as well. But stay tuned, because if they found baby rattles, there's no telling what else they found, and there's a lot to uncover underneath every single thing in every spot on this realm. Thought this was kind of funny. June 25th, 1919. Italians do much to Americanize Italy. Rome, June 25th. The Italian who has lived long in America is helping to Americanize Italy more potently than other factors could. He has introduced American ideas and American ways of doing things at every possible turn, when it is practical and more efficient than the Italian. The Italo-American has brought back from America as an idea of better housing conditions, and if he decides to settle again in Italy, he builds a home patterned along American lines with plenty of space around it and with its division of rooms. Most Italian families of the farming sections are accustomed to live in one large room, while large numbers live in thatched huts which dot the sides of mountains, hidden among the trees and brush. Several families live in what would seem an ordinary American family's habitat. So, yeah, figures. So Americanizing everything is pretty much what they wanted to do to get the old world out. November 1905. I found this interesting. Provisions from trees. There is a tree which grows in Sumatra, Algeria, and China, which is known as the vegetable tallow tree. From its fruit, large quantities of oil and tallow are extracted, and the fruit is gathered in November or December when all the leaves have fallen. Excellent candles are made from the berries of a tree which grows in some parts of South Africa and the Azores. At Sierra Leone is found the cream fruit tree, the fruit of which is very agreeable in taste. In Ceylon, there is the breadfruit tree, from which a food is made in the same way that we make bread. It is said to be equally good and nutritious. In South America, we find the milk tree, and it makes me wonder what those ancient trees, like the Devil's Tower and whatnot, if those were trees, which I believe they were, imagine the things that could have come from that and been harvested and made from all of those amazing ancient trees everywhere that we missed out on. March 1879, extraordinary upheaval of a lake. The German papers give the following account of an occurrence at Rappelsdorf in the Erfurt district, which, though dated the 21st of last month, is not uninteresting, if true. Yesterday, at 5:45 p.m., the water of the Todd-10 Lake suddenly rose with a violent bubbling, flooding the surrounding land for nearly 500 meters, and has suddenly returned to its natural bed. One Rappelsdorf inhabitant will have it that he saw a bubbling pillar of water rise 50 feet out of the lake, and that it burst asunder and spread on every side. During the rise of the water, subterranean noises were heard. All that is now to be seen is a deep gaping rent in the earth, from which from time to time vapor rises. The whole land over which the water spread is covered with innumerable small shells and dead fishes. There is no telling what happened there.